Good day, traders. This is Stefanos on behalf of Tixee, and in today's webinar, we'll be giving an outlook of the market for the week of the 18th until the 22nd of July. Now, looking at some of the highlights for next week, we're yet again found in one of the most important periods with regards to stocks, which is the so-called earnings season. For those who are not aware, it's the time of the year that companies come in and report their figures over a particular quarter. In this occasion, it's going to be for Q2 of 2022. And obviously, it's a very important period because, as you can imagine, because you have so many companies reporting their figures, we have analysts upgrading or downgrading stocks and so on and so forth. It can bring in a lot of volatility in the markets. Aside from that, we're going to be having, it's going to be more or less like a blockbuster week next week. We're going to have more than 1,000 names reporting their numbers, and we're going to look into some of them in more detail later on. But first, disclaimer, as always, please know that all of the ideas discussed in the webinar are my own opinions and do not make up for any form of investment, trading advice, neither any recommendations to buy or sell. You should always do your own research and due diligence before buying or selling any securities, financial products, or instruments, and whether you use any kind of trading strategies. Any information that relates to past performance is not indicative of future results. So, looking at stocks, like we said, next we'll have more than 1,000 different names, and where I'm getting this figure from is actually right here. Market Insider is a pretty good website that you can use in order to keep track of all the companies that are going to be reporting their numbers. As you can see here, we have today, tomorrow. You can also choose like the different kind of filters here. So if you look at next week, essentially it gives you a little number here as well, which is the number of companies who are going to be reporting their figures in total next week. That obviously involves large cap, mid cap, and small cap, but you can obviously, if you just want to look at large caps, you can just click on that one. It's just going to filter just the large caps for you. As you can see right at the top of the list is going to be Tesla on the 20th of July. So it can be a good way for you to prepare for the stocks that you like to keep an eye on with regards to their earnings. Now, of course, even though there's so many different stocks reporting their figures, doesn't mean we have to keep an eye on all of them. Obviously, that's impossible, but rather a handful which are of interest to us. Now, some of the notable ones reporting their numbers next week, like we said, it's going to be Tesla, but I've noted down a few more. So aside from Tesla, it's going to be Johnson & Johnson, Bank of America, American Express, Goldman Sachs, Netflix, which you also mentioned during the look back, and Twitter, just to name a few. Of course, all of this, it goes without saying that they're listed on Tixee's platform. So if I go, if I switch to the platform itself, you can just type in the ticker if you know it, or you can just type in the name of the company itself. So you have Twitter. You can obviously click on the little icon here just to bring up the chart. If you want to look, let's say, Bank of America, the ticker symbol is BAC, so I'll type it in here, same thing. Or Goldman Sachs, it's GS, and pretty much the same thing. So you get the gist. You can use different reporting websites to see whether what the revenue expectations and the earnings per share estimate is going to be. Another important thing to note is always the timing of the release. I'm not talking about the date. Obviously, the date you will have to know in advance, but also whether it's going to be released in the pre-market session, or in the after-hour session of the stock opening hours. Because obviously, if it's gonna, let's say, there's a company reporting their figures in the pre-market hours on Tuesday. So obviously the impact of the actual earnings figure, you're likely going to see with the open on the very same day itself. So in the morning hours then, once the market opens, which is 9:30 Eastern Standard Time, that's when you're going to be seeing the impact of the earnings report there and then. Whereas if the company reports their figures in the after hours, so after the market closes, because obviously you still have a period where companies are still trading, but it's obviously low liquidity environment, and some of them report their figures during that period. So obviously, if that's the case, and there's like a sudden movement in the after hours, then obviously this is gonna translate with the open on the very next day. So that's why it's important to keep track of the timing of the release of the reports. But yeah, other than that, obviously you can just make a little bit of a watch list with regards to the stocks that interest you, and you can just, like we said, you can search the ticker symbol here, and if you find, obviously you're more than welcome to keep an eye on trade it if you want through tixee. So yeah, this is with regards to stocks. Obviously it's not going to last just a week. Again, if I look at Market Insider, it's obviously gonna be updating constantly, so you can change the filters here depending on the dates that you want to look into, so you can look very well in advance and narrow down the ones that you actually want to trade. So yeah, this is with regards to stocks, like we said. Now we're gonna look at the economic calendar for Forex. You can find that by clicking on going to the home page of tixee, and then on the economic calendar, which can be found from Education and Research tab. Here again, you have some filters to make use of. For the sake of the video, we're gonna switch to medium and high impact events, and obviously next week. Keep an eye on the time here in the time zone, because you wanna make sure you have the correct one set to ensure that you're looking at the correct hours of the events. Now, on Monday, it's gonna be a slightly slow day with regards to the economic calendar for Forex. You can see not that we don't have any high impact events, and even the medium ones are not that. I mean, they're not ones that would interest me on the very least. But of course, if you see some that you would like to trade, then obviously you can do so. But I don't see any significant ones, in my opinion, for the time being on Monday. So moving on to Tuesday, that's when we have the first high impact event of the week, which is going to be the meeting minutes from the Reserve Bank of Australia. It's going to be at 2:30 a.m. UK time. And obviously you can see the tooltip. We expect more or less a 30 pip volatility in the 4 hours after the event. I mean, this is what the past has shown. Obviously doesn't mean that's going to happen again. We could get more volatility, we could even get less, but it's just a good indication to keep in mind. Now then, in the regular London session, we're going to have employment data from the UK at 7 a.m. followed, well, it's going to be the same time. We're going to have the trade balance figure from Switzerland, inflation data from the Eurozone at 10. And then towards midday, we're going to have housing data from the US. And in the afternoon, we're going to finish the day off with a speech from the Bank of England Governor, Bailey. Then moving on to Wednesday, kicking things off with a speech this time from the Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia. It's going to be right past midnight. Then in the regular London session, we're going to have inflation data from the UK. Then inflation data is going to follow suit, but it's going to be released from Canada towards midday on this occasion, followed by housing data again from the US, consumer confidence from the Eurozone in the early afternoon hours, and then finishing the day with the trade balance figure from New Zealand, which is going to be heading into Thursday. On Thursday, we're going to have data from Japan this time. We're going to have the interest rate decision, like we mentioned as well, and the trade balance. So two high impact events. Of course, the time difference is quite significant. I mean, one of them is going to be released towards 1 a.m. UK time. The other one is going to be 3 hours later. But again, two high impact events for the Japanese yen alone. Then we're going to have the interest rate decision from the EU. It's going to be at midday UK time, which is then going to be followed by the press conference from the ECB, and then a speech from ECB's president Christine Lagarde. And then heading into Friday, again, we'll start the day off with data from Japan. It's going to be inflation data on this occasion. In the regular London session, we're going to have retail sales figure from the UK as the next high impact event. Manufacturing data from Germany at 8:30, and then overall the Eurozone. And then we're going to be finishing the day and the week off with manufacturing data from the US as well. So it's a mixed kind of calendar, starting the week off slightly quiet, but then picking things up from Tuesday onwards. Some days I'm going to be busier than others. But again, I feel like for the next few weeks, the main events of interest are going to be the earnings reports from different companies listed in the New York Stock Exchange. So definitely going to be keeping an eye on those kind of releases, as well as the economic calendar. Obviously, if we get any more interest rate decisions, unemployment data, all that kind of thing is still pretty significant to traders. It all comes down to what you prefer trading, specifically whether it's stocks, Forex, commodities, and so on and so forth. And since we're on the topic of commodities and the economic calendar, of course, don't forget the oil inventory report, which is going to be released on the usual Wednesday. So yeah, these are the events to keep an eye on. And then lastly, let's talk a little bit about Bitcoin specifically. So I'm going to head over to, let me just pull up the chart. Because it's something we've been tracking quite extensively for the past couple of months. We're looking at the weekly time frame. Last week, we're basically still within this region. As you can see, looking at it a week later, we're pretty much still trading within the same one. Now, looking at the chart itself, in my opinion, everything is pointing towards the downside. Why? I'm going to pull up some indicators as well. So here we have the 8-period EMA exponential moving average, and the yellow line is the 21-period EMA. Crossover obviously happened all the way up here, and we've been selling off ever since. So just by looking at the moving averages themselves, obviously they're both pointing towards the downside. Of course, we are a little bit overextended. So we are getting a kind of pullback happening right here, which is obviously gonna give the moving averages like a chance to like come back together again and trade alongside, I would say. And this is what could trigger essentially the next move, either to the downside or upside. But in my opinion, it's leaning a little bit towards the downside, because the moving averages, when you look at them, they act like slings. So they come together. Which is like, so after the crossover, they will come together and then they will expand. They come together, crossover on this occasion, and again they expand. I mean, obviously this time is towards the other side, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. So again, we're pretty much gonna get, in my opinion, a similar situation here, where they're gonna start coming together as long as we're still consolidating in this area before we get the next significant move. If we look a couple of weeks back, what was happening was pretty much similar to what we're getting now. So we sold off quite strongly, and then we consolidated for like 3-4 weeks, and then that's when we got the break towards the downside. What are we getting now? A leg down again, a pretty strong impulse towards the downside, consolidating for the past 3-4 weeks. So we could be getting one more move, which is going to be, I don't know, in the next couple of days or even weeks. And in my opinion, again, it's looking like it's going to be towards the downside. Obviously, you're free to make your own judgments and analysis as to whether you think it's going to be towards the downside or upside. But yeah, just looking at the moving averages themselves, what I'm seeing here is like likely move towards the downside, potentially to clear these levels here, which is towards the 14,000 mark. And then we can just start analyzing again and see where it could be headed next. But it is a pretty impressive move, the one that it has made over the last couple of weeks. I mean, if you just measure it again from this swing high here, it's dropped by like more than 60%, which is a crazy amount. So yeah, definitely an interesting kind of weeks ahead, not just for cryptocurrencies. With stocks, I would say we have the earnings report as well. So yeah, choose your own asset classes wisely. Be patient, because again, looking at this, obviously you don't want to be getting chopped around while we're still consolidating. So be patient, let the market show you its hands, and then you can act accordingly. And yep, there you have it. This as far as the outlook for next week's markets. I hope you enjoyed the video and you found it useful, and I'll catch you all in the next one. Till then, trade safe.